Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today is March the 18th, 2026. It's been at least 18 days since the decapitation strike taking out the leadership of the uh, Iranian Islamic Republic with the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Since then, his son has succeeded him, Moshtaba Khamenei. Um, just recently, I woke up to news. I read news that um, Israel assassinated the um, some leaders of Iran's military, including its Minister of Intelligence Minister Ismail Khatib and its security chief Ali Larijani. So and apparently, Iran responded by firing um, from its most, uh, by using the most advanced missile it's used since this conflict, no longer using its cheap drones to overwhelm, the very expensive, anti, very expensive defense systems of the U.S. and Israel, including Israel's Iron Dome. So um, this missile is supposed to have, been able to move at least 2,500 kilometers, travel 2,500 kilometers, and it's supposed to be able to bypass America's defense systems, the THAAD and Patriot systems, and of course evade the Israeli Iron Dome, and it's supposed to be very lethal. Um, so I, so I'm doing this video because I saw a comment. I saw a comment from a pundit who said, "Well, that is the joint U.S. Israeli forces going to just keep on um, decapitating um, the leadership of Iran? Is the goal to just keep eliminating the leadership of Iran? Like they put in a new leadership, they kill that one, put in another one, kill that one again, um, and and how many times, I was just listening to the comments of the pundits that how many times is the U.S. going to fully decimate, completely destroy um, Iran's military system, military apparatus, its weaponry, its installments, that it keeps destroying them over and over again. Since last year, June 2025, it was supposed to have destroyed, including the nuclear facilities, was supposed to have destroyed all its nuclear capabilities. But it keeps coming back to do the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to title this Sisyphean task. There was something else I wanted to talk about, but the repetitiveness of these strikes, and with no um, with no endful, with no gain in the end. Repetitive actions. They end up being futile, nonetheless. Right? It it evokes what's called a Sisyphean task. I like going back to the classics, the Greeks, so a Sisyphean task, right? That's like a fool's errand, right? When you're a fool's errand, on an enterprise or an adventure, labor that's redundant, it's just taxing, and it's futile in the end, right? You're just exerting yourself, uh, and there's no result, without any lasting result, right? So that appears to be what we're engaged in right now. the Sisyphean task. Let me tell the story of Sisyphus. It's very interesting. So Sisyphus is a Greek, uh, it's a figure in Greek mythology, and he was cursed by the gods, right, to continue pushing a rock or boulder up a steep hill, right? Push a rock up a steep hill like a mountain, just push it up. And when it gets to a high point, right, the boulder rolls back down again to the bottom of the hill. And then he goes back again and starts the process all over again. And he rolls it up again. And when he's nearing, when he's reached a point where he's exerted himself significantly, right, never makes it to the top, he rolls back down again. And he has to go and start again, all from the bottom, all over again. That's what you call a Sisyphean task, right? You're just exerting yourself, right? It demands a tremendous amount of labor, resources, wasteful, right, without any lasting benefits, right? It's futile. Just going through a process that's futile. Now, the curse of Sisyphus, however, is it lasts till eternity, right? So he's going to keep doing this thing over and over into eternity because he was cursed by the gods. For why? Why was he cursed by the gods? Because of hubris. So Sisyphus was cursed by the gods because of his hubris. Hubris, arrogance, pride. He was cursed to do a futile task throughout eternity. So right now, um, but Americans don't have eternity to spend on a wasteful war, right? That's destroyed a lot of lives. A lot of American soldiers have died. May their souls rest in peace. About 13 soldiers so far have died. The last time I checked, the casualties report collated from a combination of sources: Al Jazeera, New York Times, Time, the variety of sources, WHO, different sources. Um, 13 soldiers supposed to have died, American soldiers, and approaching about 500 injured, right? So the thing is, there's also been this propaganda war. I'm seeing how mainstream media is so misleading, and we're not Nazis, and I'm getting so concerned. Why is the media not balanced? Why does it seem to be one-sided, and why does it seem to disseminate so much misinformation, right? Garble information. It's bizarre. Um, Iran's supposed to have lost about 1,400 lives so far. Mainly civilians. It's conflicting. Because they say, well, all these military heads have died. Because I heard on television somebody saying, well, about 10,000 um, military heads have died. It can't be that many. I don't know. But from Time and New York Times and Reuters and Al Jazeera, it says for about 1,400 Iranians have died since February 28th, 2026, as of March 18, 2026. So 1,400 Iranians have died from the bombing, carpet bombing that's been going on, including 175, and with schoolgirls who died from the bombing of a of a school, right, an elementary school. Um, Sadly, that's sad. And lots of Iranian injured. Over 6,000 Iranians have been injured, right? Mainly civilians. For Israeli, for the for Israel, about over 15 to 20 uh, Israelis have died since the inception of hostilities, and it says about 3,000 injured, right? Again, this information, because a lot of information is apparently being suppressed. Um, This is what I get from various sources that the information is being suppressed. They're not independent journalists, and this is what they claim. Um, and then, of course, Hezbollah, who are sort of they've been sponsored and they're backed by Iran. Um, in fact, I'm going to use this to discuss the region, the Middle East, how it is today. Um, in Lebanon, there've been about because Israel's been attacking Lebanon, about 900 deaths in Lebanon. Um, you know, with about over 1,500 injured in Lebanon, and the Iraq has had deaths over 15. Um, now so of course Iran had been sending out missiles attacking areas that were the U.S. military bases, including Iraq. But um, it has a network, a support network in these areas in Iraq as well. So over 15 deaths in Iraq so far. There have been deaths in Syria. The Iranian sponsored groups, right? Cells in Shia cells in Syria as well that support Iran, and several people have died there as well. And then of course the Gulf, uh, the GCC states, the GCC countries, they've had at least 20 deaths in total, right? Um, so there's been so much loss, and in terms of economics, the U.S. They said the first 7 days of the war. I saw someone commenting on a report that it cost the U.S. Over $11 billion, about $11.3 billion in the first 7 days of the war. And also senators saying, including Senator Warren, saying the war's cost $1 billion a day. Now it's been at least 18 days, so it's cost over $18 billion. So yeah, over $18 billion to American taxpayers. So it's been very costly. Of course, the economic impact. I've done a video discussing the economic impact. Price of oil gone up over $100 a barrel. I'm not going to discuss that here, but I want to talk about the significance of the environment, the Middle East, how significant it is. So a lot of comments and criticisms that have been made. I read an article, talking about how um, the U.S. is trying to push out, or the Trump administration is trying to push out the theocratic state in Iran, and it's very repressive, and replace it with a secular government. It's ironic because the GCC states are actually theocratic states as well, right? Not that they're necessarily hierarchies like um, Iran, hierarchies where saints or priests, the cleric, actually rules the state. And a theocratic state doesn't necessarily have to be clergy ruling, right? Like the Vatican City is a theocratic state, but nobody goes to attack the Vatican City, right? The Pope, right? There's a theocratic state there, right? And besides, first of all, according to international human rights law and the United Nations Charter, every sovereign state has a right to rule itself as it sees fit. That's internal politics. It's not for outsiders to get involved, right? So that's one. So they can choose whatever they want. America, we chose to separate church and states. Um, Now, in the GCC countries, these states, like Saudi Arabia, uh, they are de facto theocratic states, right? The difference is that they're puppet regimes, right? They're subservient. They do. bow down to the United States, right? Have the United States set up military bases there. But Iran chooses not to, right? Iran chooses not to. That's the difference because um, Saudi Arabia is actually ruled under Sharia law. The constitution of Saudi Arabia is the Quran. And the rulers of Saudi Arabia, even though they have a monarchy, right? They have a hereditary monarchy, which was something that was practiced during the caliphate from the establishment of Islam, right? Um, they derive their legitimacy from their monarch, their king, being custodian of Islam, right? He's the protector of Islam. So it is a theocratic state. He's not a clergy, but it is a theocratic state. Their laws are according to Sharia law. They're run by Sharia law. Other religions are prohibited from being practiced in public, right? It is actually a capital offense in Saudi Arabia to convert from Islam. You'll be executed. So only Islam is allowed, right? In Iran, other religions are allowed to be practiced in Iran. Jewish people still exist Iran, in Iran practicing Judaism. There are Christians in Iran. There's Zoroastrians in Iran. They practice their religion, right? Even though it's a theocratic state. But Saudi Arabia is more repressive with respect to religion. They do have a monarchy that's sort of subservient, that's you know to um, to the United States interests, and allows America to have a military base there, and America buys its all their partnership. Uh, but I've been doing videos explaining the history of Iran, so I'm not going to get into that here. But I wanted to point out how it's interesting that there's been this criticism. So it's hypocritical to challenge Iran, uh, to give as a fig leaf for seeking regime change, which is illegal, right, according to international law. But seeking regime change in Iran, uh, trying to usher in a secular government when Saudi Arabia is not a secular nation, or Saudi Arabia, not or the other GCC nations, right? Saudi Arabia is not a secular nation, right? All the GCC nations, there's Bahrain, there's, um, in fact, it's ironic, right? Bahrain is majority Shia, right? Um, the seat of Shia Islam is Iran, right? That's how it's infused with their culture and certain beliefs, just slightly different. People think that there isn't a major difference between Shia and a Sunni, right? The Shia, right? They came about in Iran. Their base was in the territory of Iran, with Khorasan being the Khorasan area being their capital, their base. Khorasan, that area had been it had been the homeland, where the Parthians first arose, right? The Parthian kingdom that overthrew the Seleucid Empire of the Greeks. So after the Arabian conquest of the Arabian Muslims, right? Islam's when the Islamic Empire, which conquered um, the Persian empires, but was ruling from first of all, the Arabian Peninsula, and then from Baghdad in Iran. Later on, there was some kind of civil war, and the backbone of that civil war were were Persian soldiers, Persian warriors, right? Persian and Iranian warriors, people from Iran, right? Because the Iranians were great soldiers, right? And they helped to establish this, the beginning of this Shia Islam. Of course, one of the tenets of Shia Islam is they believe in that the Mahdi, right? The Mahdi is like a Messiah that's supposed to come back. And so they claim that, descendants of Ali. Ali was the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad. They're supposed to be the true leaders of, the religion, the faith, and the 12th Imam. Right, this is what they call the 12 as the 12th Imam. Uh, went through uh, uh, occultation. Right, occultation is um, where one's supposed to disappear under some kind of divine intervention, right? He's being hidden under a divine divine cover, right? It happens in Christianity as well, in Judaism. So we see in Judaism, like when the prophet Elijah, right, instead of him dying a physical death, right, he just, you know, angels were supposed to, a charge was supposed to come and pick him, and he disappeared, right? He disappears into heaven, right? That's Elijah. So the same, something similar, with the Shia. They believe that, there's the 12th Imam, a descendant of Ali, who is supposed to be in occultation. He's being hidden, right, through divine power, and that he will return as a Messiah, a Mahdi. And these Abrahamic religions all have this Messiah thing, whether it's Judaism or it's Christianity, similar even Sunni Islam as well. And so they just differ in little things. And as I said, the Persian, there's a Persian influence, right, that came in. So interestingly, in the GCC nations, right, they're actually adherents of Shia Islam all over. In Bahrain, which is one of the GCC nations, the GCC nations, I've said there's six. Again, it's Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, um, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, right? They, all of them have um, Shias amongst them. They all have Shias amongst them. Shia adherents of Shia Islam. Saudi Arabia has about 15%. Um, Bahrain majority are Shia Muslims, about 70%. And the leader of the Shia Islam are in Iran, the Ayatollah. So America's taking out a Muslim leader, a religious leader, right? Imagine the outrage of the world if anybody were to kill the Pope, if a nation were to just decide to assassinate the Pope. So that's sort of what has happened, right? But anyway, again, I'm not subscribing, or I'm a Christian. I'm actually a devout Christian, by the way. I'm a Christian, but I'm not subscribed, but I'm also a lawyer and a humanist. So I'm not subscribing to um, any nation uh, being uh, oppressed or subjugated, or that's not something I uphold the law. There's international human rights law. This senseless indiscriminate killing that's going on, um, everyone's come out now saying, well, there was no real reason to go to war with Iran, for at least for the United States. I talked about how Joe Kent, who was the director of U.S. National Counterterrorism Center, resigned yesterday, saying, because of the war in Iran, saying that Iran did not pose an imminent threat to the United States. So, and this guy is an ex veteran. He's an war veteran. He's done 11 tours, military tours. Right, it was ex CIA. His wife died by a suicide bombing in the Middle East, in Syria. Right. So this guy is coming out, and he's actually a Trump supporter. He's a MAGA supporter, but he's coming out and saying, "Hey, that this war is senseless." Right. So, um, if we consider the area, that region, the Middle East, Iran has a lot of supporters in that Middle East. And take a look at that area. Again, as I said, so there's Shia Muslims in all the GCC nations. Now, and there's tremendous wealth in that region now. 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which um, is now being commanded by, blocked by Iran, or at least the fear of Iran's attacks. If Iran didn't have any military weapons anymore, if it's all been obliterated, how are missiles still being fired at Israel? Why is anybody scared that Iran's going to be firing missiles and drones if all its military has been decimated? Look, the reported killings are still less than 5,000. That's still a lot, right? Iran has a population of 93 million people. 93 million. Its military is a million strong, right? Its military is structured in a very complex manner, right? But in aggregate, about a million. So I talked about the Pyrrhic victory, why the Greeks, even though they defeated the Romans, they couldn't really conquer them because the Roman had a replenishable uh, source of manpower. They had manpower that could just easily be replenished. So that's basically what Iran has in its territory. I'll do a video later on and discuss, Iran's unique territory. But Iran also has these mountains, right? The Zagros Mountains and all these other mountains. It's been familiar with for centuries, millennia, right? Thousands of years. And it has the scientific capability to hide these missiles, its military infrastructure in these mountains, deep inside its mountains, right? As much as 300 feet beneath, right? Beneath the ground, under these mountains. So that even uh, these huge bombing activities, the carpet bombing of military installations, they're futile. They're not penetrating down to 300 feet. Who is benefiting from all that's going on? China. I saw that China just um, built the largest underwater uh, road tunnel in the world, right? Consider the technology it used to bore through underground, underwater, right? Underwater, establish this huge structure, right? A tunnel that's safe. So there's a technology. America's rival, China, is benefiting from this needless war and waste of resources. And it's close to Iran. It's an ally of Iran. It's an ally of Iran. It's the number one buyer of Iran's oil. 90% of Iran's oil goes to China. China is not wasting its money in conflict, in any war. It's just studying America's weaknesses, and you know, it's deepening its relationship with the region and the rest of the world, right? Areas that have tremendous resources. While U.S. reputation, its image in the world is being damaged by this needless war. Um, and consider even the GCC nations, which I said have significant populations of Shia Muslims who look to uh, the Iranian uh, Shia clerics as leaders, and are, they are on the same page with them, right? Again, Bahrain has 70%. So GCC nation, 70% of its Muslim population are Shia. Or even Saudi Arabia has 15% Shia population. And look at the population in the area. There's a tremendous amount of wealth there now. In United Arab Emirates, the the largest population, largest ethnicity, right, are not Arabs. They're actually Indians. Indians are 40% of the population of the United Arab Emirates. South Asians and the others. That's South Asians are Indians, Pakistanis, Bengali. That's people from Bangladesh. Expatriates make up the majority of the population of the United Arab Emirates, right? Where there's Abu Dhabi, the tallest building in the world today. America no longer has the tallest building in the world, by the way. That's significant, right? The tallest building in the world is Burj Khalifa, right, in Abu Dhabi, which is within the sorry, in Dubai, not Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, which is in United Arab Emirates, right? It's a center of tourism. Everybody goes there, so there's tremendous wealth in that area. Now, United Arab Emirates, where Dubai is in, the majority population are not even Arabs, are not the indigenous people. They are Indians, Pakistanis, people who go there to work. It's a different world now. And these people, right, the Pakistanis, by the way, the second largest population of Shias, Muslims in the world, are in Pakistan. Pakistan is an ally of Iran. It's friendly with America as well. It's presents itself as neutral, right? But it's a neighbor to Iran. So people in that region, right, they go back a very long time, right? They have a shared history, shared religion, shared culture. The second largest of Shia population in the world is Shia. So it's not a place you want to send American troops, right? Iran is not Iraq, right? Iran is not Iraq. You can see Iran, with all its strikes on the Gulf states, nations, right? None of those nations have hit Iran back. They haven't struck back. None of those nations have struck back. So, looking at allies of Iran that are just being quiet. By the way, um, Iran's neighbor is Russia, which has been America has been saying it appears Russia has been providing intelligence and help to Iran, right? Russia is Iran's neighbor. It's an ally of Iran. They have a long history, long shared history. There's Armenia, but Armenians basically see themselves as Iranians. They're minority Armenians in Iran as well. But Armenia has its kingdom. It was carved out by the Russian Empire. So there's Armenia, but the Armenians see themselves as they're cousins, Armenians and Iranians, and there's some just little states, but basically for all intents and purposes, um, Iran is a neighbor of Russia. They're very close, so it's very easy for Russia to provide support to to Iran in the event of a ground invasion. It will be very easy for China. China's still watching, right? China's fresh, still watching. China is an ally of Iran, no doubt about that. And it is a rival of the United States. So it's a Sisyphean task for America to continue wasting money, bombing and decapitating, trying to destroying nuclear weapons over and over again. It's like it's doing the task of Sisyphus, right? Takes a rock, reaches the top, it rolls back down, and then it goes back again to the bottom of the hill, and then takes it up. In fact, in the mythology, he gets it all the way to the top, gets it all the way to the top. So he apparently achieves his task, but the rock doesn't stay there. It rolls back down again to the bottom of the hill. So Sisyphus has to go back again and roll it back up again. Very laborious, very time consuming, very taxing, right? It rolls it all the way to the top of the hill, but it rolls back, the boulder rolls back down again to the bottom of the hill. And he has to repeat it again for eternity. Americans don't have eternity to decapitate Iranian leaders, to destroy, decimate destroy, obliterate Iran's nuclear capacity, and obliterate Iran's military, which keeps firing missiles from nowhere. Right? They're three. They're in the mountains, deep down, where the bombers cannot reach. Right? The bombers they're not reaching because they dug 300 feet deep in the tunnel, deep down. Iran's ready for war, right? Again, they're using asymmetric warfare, the way they've hit the world, the global economy, and they'll continue to hit the global economy, right? And of course, their use of cheap drones and other means, right? They're going to use other things that are they're positioned to be activated. Look at that region, like I said, these are all Shia Muslims, right? And you never know what the Sunnis will also do. Look, Sunni Muslims, Sunni Iraqis, right? The ISIS, they support Iran. You know, again, by no means do I'm not supporting terrorists. I'm a historian, and I don't want American soldiers to die for nothing, right? In a war that a top government officials, including a top official in the Trump administration, who was director until yesterday, director of U.S. Um, uh, U.S. National Counterterrorism Center. That's Joe Kent. He said, "Look, Iran was not an imminent threat. There's no real purpose for us to be there, right? We need to be like those nations, China, that has focused its resources away from wars and focused on building its nation, right? See, amongst the top 10 buildings in the world now, China has five. The world, the Asia is now the richest country in continent. Asia is the richest continent in the world. They focused on building, developing, right? Not getting in these continuous wars like America has done or Europe. Europe has had the chance to rebuild, but the center of the world, the epicenter of wealth has moved away from the West. It's now in Asia. See, the top 10, before, for a long time, we used to say, well, America had the tallest buildings in the world. The Empire State Building was built in 1931. No, the first five tallest buildings in the world, right? Because America used to use it as um, a display of American strength and wealth, right? Our power. That we have the tallest building in the world, the Empire State Building, which was built in 1931 back then. Remember, for a long time when I was in Nigeria, we say, I used to, and they'd ask me, I'd say, oh, the tallest building in the world is in America. Today, when you check, that's not the case anymore. The tallest building in the world now is in the Middle East. It's in Dubai, right? The Burj Khalifa, right? It's in the Middle East. America is not in the top five, does not have the top five tallest buildings in the world. There's only one Western nation that's in the top 10, right, of highest buildings in the world. Just one Western nation, and that's the United States, right? That's the United States. That's a uh, one World Trade Center. It's number seven. It's number seven. China has five of the tallest, five of the top 10 tallest buildings in the world. Five features five times, right, in the top 10 buildings in the world. So we should focus on developing our economy, focus our resources on healthcare, education, our infrastructure. Anyway, I'll stop this video here and I'll continue in subsequent ones. My name is Oluro Timosha. I'll keep you posted.